Narayana Samarambam Vyasa Shankara Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnana Pradam Gurum Mumukshunam Hitarthaya Tattva Bodha Vidiyate. In the last video, we concluded our discussion about the 5 sheaths, and now we are going to take up the topic of the 3 states. This is one of the things that makes a text like Tattva Bodha so cool, is that normally if you were studying the source material, the Upanishads, you would have to go from one Upanishad, like the Taittiriya, to get the analysis of the 5 sheaths. Then you'd have to go to the Mandukya to get the analysis of the 3 states. But in this text, Tattva Bodha, they are all compiled into one text. So I'll reiterate the point that even though Tattva Bodha is commonly considered to be an introductory text, it's not as if teachings are really being left out, because we are not only covering one teaching, but we're covering several different teachings, the 3 bodies, the 5 sheaths, the 3 states, all in one setting. So you're getting all of the big Upanishadic teachings right here in Tattva Bodha. So again, even though it's considered an introductory text, it's not exactly, because you're getting everything all in this one text. And on top of that, the way that I'm teaching this, the way I'm commenting on it and explaining it, is not just for beginners. The explanations that I'm giving here are all the way up for advanced seekers. I don't want to go over anyone's head who's new to this, but I also don't want to be patronizing or condescending to people. I'd rather give you the benefit of the doubt, hit you with everything full force, and if you get it, that's great. That's what we're aiming for here. But if you don't, that's completely fine too, because we are going to continue to go over these points again and again in this text and in texts that we're going to take up in the future. So it's just a stylistic choice. However, doing it that way, even a text that's considered to be an introductory text, is also, teaching it this way makes it an advanced text, really. So I know we're taking a lot of time with it, but we really are going through in depth all of the important Vedantic teachings. 5 sheaths. We finished talking about that. If you remember, there's the food sheath, there's the vital air sheath, there is the mind sheath, the intellect sheath, and also the bliss sheath. We went over those, the 5 sheaths, the Pancha Koshas, and talked at length about how those things cannot be self. They cannot be you. That's the section of the text that we're in. We're talking about not you, not self, anatma, or generally speaking, objects. That's the point of this teaching, is to discriminate between yourself, the unchanging, ever-present conscious subject, and the always changing, transient objects. That's what we are getting at here. This is the kind of thing that needs to be going through your mind outside of this teaching. You need to be analyzing your experience. You need to be analyzing objects and understanding how you cannot be these objects, and how these objects, furthermore, can't be real. So, we are objectifying the not self in a few different ways. We've already talked about the 3 bodies, talked about the 5 sheaths. Now, we are looking at the not self as experience in general, because you can look at it that way. when we're talking about the three bodies, we're talking about the five sheaths. Those are all objects of your experience. So we're just saying now we're going to look at the self just as experience. So one point to make before we go into that is that everything you experience at any time, of course, is not self. The external world is not self. Your body is not self. Your mind is not self. So even the experiencer that experiences objects is also an object. It's also an experience. The subtle body that has the mind, the senses, the intellect that thinks and feels and pulls in data from outside, through the organs of knowledge, through the five senses, even the subtle body itself is also an object and also an experience. So we are including that in there. It's not separate from this analysis. In the analysis of experience, the experiencing entity itself, the subtle body, is included in that. So when we're looking at the not self as experience in general, there's only three ways to look at it, because there's only three experiences that you ever have. There is the waking state experience, what's happening right now. There is the dream state experience, and then there is the dreamless sleep or deep sleep experience. Those are the three states of experience. We're going to analyze those, and that is going to help us to see, number one, how they are not real, and also, number two, how the person that we think we are in each one of those states cannot be us. So that's the setup, that's the introduction. Let's go to the text here and see what it has to say. We're under the heading, the three states of experience. If you haven't already, you can download this version of the text as well as a brief commentary from my website. The three states of experience. What are the three states of experience? They are the waking, dream, and deep sleep states. Just said that. So we're going to take up the waking state first. What is the waking state? The state of experience when the gross body is present and the sense organs are perceiving sense objects such as sight, sound, etc. When the self seems to identify with the gross body, it is called the waker. So, we have the waking state. In the waking state here, it says that the gross body is present. So when you're awake, your physical body is there. You're experiencing your physical body. Fair enough, easy enough. This is also when the sense organs are perceiving sense objects. So your subtle body with its organs of knowledge that we talked about in the five sheaths and three bodies analysis are perceiving external objects. So when you're awake, the external world is present. Okay. All of your senses are available to turn outward to experience external things, and there's an external world there to experience. And again, all this is pretty obvious. Also, too, your mind, of course, is active when you're awake, so you can also experience internal things like thoughts, feelings, memories, etc. All of those things are there available too. So in this state, when the external world is present and you can experience external objects, when the self seems to identify with the gross body, it is called the waker, the waking state entity. So what do we mean here when we say the self seems to identify with the gross body? Basically, what it's saying is that when you're awake, you think that you're this person. The person that you look, get up, go to the bathroom, you look at the mirror, like that's me. The person that's on my driver's license, etc. Those kind of things, I think that's me. When I'm awake, I think, hey, that's me. This body, this mind, that must be me. I've made a point here in the text to say when the self seems to identify with the gross body, because the self doesn't actually identify with anything. The self doesn't have a mind to identify with anything, and also the self is non-dual, and that means there's nothing other than the self. So there can't really be you, the self, plus something else that you identify with. That is all part of the appearance. That is all part of ignorance. To even think that there is something that the self identifies with. If you want to boil that statement down, you can just go back to what I said previously, and really the only important thing to know is that when you're awake, you think that you are this body and mind. That's it. That's all we need to know. Moving on to the dream state. What's the dream state? It's the state of experience when the gross body is not present and the sense organs are not perceiving external objects. Impressions left on the causal body from previous experiences in the waking state are projected into the subtle body, creating the dream world. When the self seems to identify with this experience in the subtle body, it's called the dreamer. Okay, so when you're dreaming, your gross body is not present for experience. Fair enough. You might dream of yourself. You may see yourself in a dream. However, your gross body is not there. It's a dream body. It's a memory of the experience of your body transformed and projected into the dream. So your gross body is not there, and the sense organs are not perceiving external objects. Again, you are dreaming, so you're perceiving objects, maybe a dream car, a dream tree, your dream wife, your dream husband, dream kids, dream job, all of these kind of things, any number of things you might be dreaming of, but you are not perceiving them externally. They are purely made out of your mind. They are purely appearing in your mind. It's not something outside of your mind, the way that when you're awake, the external world is there outside of your mind to perceive. You are experiencing something that's purely in your own mind when you dream. How does that happen? Where does the material for this dream come from? Impressions left on the causal body from previous experiences in the waking state are projected into the subtle body, creating the dream world. Now, we may not have talked about this before. The whole topic of vasanas. When I say impressions, that really, the Sanskrit equivalent of that is essentially vasana or samskara. Now, to explain that, what that means is that when you have an experience in the waking state, that experience leaves an impression, leaves a residue, if you will, on your causal body. Again, we've talked about the causal body before. We've said that the causal body is the unmanifest potential, the unmanifest seed of all of your experiences. So when your gross body is produced from the causal body, your mind and the contents of your mind are produced by the causal body. So you can think of it as the potential for those things, those objects, sprouting from the causal body. The same way that the potential for a whole tree, even though you can't see it in a seed, sprouts from a seed. So we're sprouting out. Okay, the thoughts are sprouting out. The objects are projecting out. You're seeing these thoughts and these objects, and they are being projected from the causal body. It is the cause of the subtle body. It is the cause of the gross body. All right? So that's an outward happening, if you will. I'm using that term loosely, outward. It's not really a spatial thing, but I'm kind of limited here because I have to use some kind of metaphor. So, like, think of your thoughts. Your thoughts, like, boop, they appear. Boop, they appear. They just pop up to you and they appear. So they're just appearing, what? They're appearing out of the causal body. They're unmanifest, unavailable for experience. And then they pop into your mind to be experienced. You say, oh, I'm thinking this. I'm thinking about chocolate cake. Oh, I'm thinking about that episode of Seinfeld, etc. Doesn't matter. Whatever happens to be popping into your mind is popping out, so to speak, out of the causal body and manifesting in your mind. So that's an outward process. What we're saying here in this whole talk of vasanas, samskaras, what we could just call mental tendencies. Okay, if you've ever wondered, where do my habits come from? Where does my personality come from? Why do I do what I do? Etc. All of those kind of questions. It all plays into this vasana thing. Vasanas are your conditioning. They're your program, so to speak. Now, how does that happen? Well, we said that thoughts and all of these things project out of the causal body. When you have an experience, though, that comes back to you, that experience then also comes in through the senses, or it appears in the mind, and then what? It goes in, so to speak, and leaves an impression on the causal body. And then it recycles. So think of it as a loop. Okay, something comes out from the causal body. We're causing an experience. That experience goes back in, leaves another impression. That impression projects out, has an experience. That experience comes back in, leaves an impression. So we just kind of got this loop thing going on. Like, think about a habit you have. Why does somebody like to smoke cigarettes? I used to smoke a lot of cigarettes, pack a day, right? Pack and a half, something like that. Now, why did I like to smoke cigarettes? Well, because at one time, I tried smoking a cigarette for whatever reason, and I liked it. Doing that thing left an impression on the causal body. It was something that maybe it was a real light thing. I smoked one once, I don't think much of it. But then, maybe one other time, it's like, once that impression's been there, well, it just pops out again. Hey, maybe you should smoke a cigarette. Yeah, okay, maybe I will. Not a big deal, not a big urge, but it's okay, I smoke another cigarette. Doing that experience again also leaves another impression on the causal body. And then what? It starts to become a habit. I smoke again. Reinforce that habit. As I reinforce that habit, it recycles out as a desire to do it again. I do it again, reinforce the habit, it recycles out, do it again, etc., etc., etc. We got this loop going on. Okay? The vasana, or the impression, causes a desire. The desire causes an action. Doing the action reinforces the vasana. The vasana recycles, causes the desire again, possibly stronger this time. You do the action again, it reinforces it. It's kind of like thinking about, say you have like a chunk of ice, and you just like drop a drop of water on it, and bloop, not much really happens. Another drop, not much really happens. Another drop, not much really happens. But as that drop keeps hitting, it starts to like dig a groove into that chunk of ice, and slowly, like a little bit of a channel gets carved out of that chunk of ice. You can think of it too, like with stone, like a river running down the side of a mountain. Initially there was no riverbed there, but just as the water continued to kind of flow in that direction, it wore a deeper and deeper trench into the side of the mountain until it removed enough resistance that water just starts flowing continuously down that channel. And that's the way that we can kind of think about this mental conditioning, these vasanas or samskaras. By continuing to do a particular action, it leaves an impression on the causal body. You can almost think of it as water cutting into the side of a mountain, to where eventually, those thoughts continue to flow down that ever deepening groove. So you're more likely to continue to do something, like smoking, for instance. Because, initially you smoke a cigarette, it's gross, you never want to do it again. But then for some reason you pick it up, and the more that you smoke, the more that you smoke, the more you get addicted to it, the more you crave it, and the more you're compelled to do it again. Doing it again reinforces it, etc. And that's an example of how this conditioning, these impressions, vasanas, work. And it's that way with every experience you have. Every single experience you have leaves some kind of impression on your causal body. Some experiences more so than others. Just a mundane experience like walking outside, seeing a butterfly on a bush or something like that, doesn't, going down to the mailbox, picking up your bills, that doesn't exactly leave a strong impression on your causal body. But a traumatic experience, being abused, death of a loved one, car accident, those kind of things, or maybe something really exciting like using drugs or having sex or these kind of things, these kind of things tend to leave like stronger impressions onto the causal body. Everything is leaving an impression. All experience comes in and leaves an impression on the causal body. And that in turn dictates later on kind of how you react to other things. Because you really only react to stuff in terms of what you've previously experienced. Every time that you're presented with a situation, you react to it based on prior information. You kind of, whether you're doing it consciously or not, your mind is trying to recall some kind of situation similar to that, and based on that information, make a reaction or a decision. So why do I react to a particular thing this way? Why do I think this particular thought? Why do I have this particular desire? It's all based on previous conditioning, previous experience, and that dictates how you think and act now. This is the whole cycle of vasanas, if you will. We don't have to call them vasanas. We can just call them tendencies, habits, behavioral patterns. All of those kind of things are completely fine to call it that. It's just important to understand that experiences we have leave those impressions on the causal body. Those impressions we can call vasanas. And those impressions in turn manifest as our thoughts and our desires to do certain things. And so they eventually end up dictating our thoughts and our behaviors. And that's where all those things come from. That's where your personality comes from. That's where your habits, your habitual thinking patterns, your behavioral patterns, that's where all of those things come from. Now, how does that tie back into this topic of the dream state? Well, what we're saying is that the dream itself is purely thought. You're not experiencing externally experiencing a flying pink elephant. That's just a figment of your mind when you dream. So what we're saying is that all of the elements, this world, this sometimes very intricate, ornate world that appears in dream, is made from recycled experience in the waking state. Granted, you've never experienced a pink elephant in the waking state, but you've experienced an elephant, you've seen the color pink, maybe you've seen a pink elephant in a cartoon, those kind of things. It doesn't come out exactly the same way as when you experience it in the waking state. It can be garbled, it can be rearranged, it can be turned into some kind of symbolic kind of thing. So it doesn't exactly mean that everything you experience in a dream you've experienced in the waking state, but all of the raw materials for that dream to be made come from the waking state experience. So that's just to explain that verse. Where dreams come from, what they mean, is that important? No, not at all, actually. Interesting, but not important. And let me make that completely clear. I've probably spent 10 or 15 minutes talking about this now, just to say that how dreams happen and what happens in dreams in relation to self-inquiry is absolutely irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. Like, it doesn't matter what your dreams mean. It does not matter where they come from. It's totally cool if you want to investigate those things and analyze them. That's fine. There's no harm in it. But I'm just saying, we're talking about self-inquiry here. We're talking about Vedanta. So dream theory and all of that kind of stuff is completely irrelevant. All right. So what is the thing that is relevant then when we are talking about the dream state? Well, it's the same thing that's relevant in the waking state. In the waking state, it's not particularly relevant what actually happens in the waking state in regards to self-inquiry. Because all we're trying to find out is, what? Are these objects real? Am I an object, or am I the limitless conscious subject? That's what we want to find out. So whether in the waking state you're at your home and you're at your apartment in Arkansas, or you're sitting on a beach in Miami, whether you're having just a regular day or you're having a terrible day, none of those things matter. The only thing that matters in the waking state in this analysis is to know that when you're awake, you identify with the waking state entity, the physical body and the subtle body, and you think that the world external to you is real. So in the dream state, the relevant thing is that you identify with the dream entity and you think that the dream world is real. That's it. Because when it's happening, when it's actually happening, you think, oh yeah, this dream world is real. That pink elephant is real. It's chasing me. I need to run away from it. If you don't think it's real in the dream state, then you wouldn't run away from it, would you? It's just a dream. No big deal. I don't have to worry about that. Okay? The point is that when awake, I think I'm the body and the subtle body. When I'm asleep, I think I'm the subtle body, basically, because that whole dream world is really just an experience in the subtle body. Okay? That's all that it is. Now, we're almost out of time here, so I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm not gonna be able to get to the deep sleep state. That is by far the most tricky one that really hangs people up, so I want to make sure to take as much time with it as I can. So let me just kind of wrap up here talking about the waking state and the dream state, and we will get to the deep sleep state in the next video. So if we've talked about the waking and the dream state, what is important to know about it in regards to self-inquiry? Well, first and foremost, nobody really thinks that they're the dream state entity. That's not exactly a problem. When you're dreaming, you often do. Sometimes people have lucid dreams and they say, oh, I'm dreaming. Fair enough. But it's not really a big problem. You don't really think that you are this dream state entity. And especially even if you think that you are when you dream, you wake up and you go, oh, that wasn't me, no big deal. No pink elephant chasing me, it's not here, it's not real, I don't have to worry about it. The real problem is that we think that this waking state is real and that we are this waking state person. I don't necessarily think that I'm Dream Vishnu, but when I wake up, oh, I must be like real life Vishnu. There I am, I'm back. Okay? But using this analysis of the three states, you look at it and go, well, if I am this person, this body and mind that exists in the waking state, well, where do I go in dream? I disappear for all intents and purposes. Now, someone might say, well, I saw you when you were sleeping. You were there, passed out on my couch, snoring away. Well, okay, that's fair enough. However, our definition of real is what? Is something that is always present, unchanging, and something that does not depend on anything else to exist or to be known to exist. So, even saying that your body, even if when you wake up, someone says, I saw you sleeping there. Now, leaving aside the question that from your point of view, you can never actually know if that's true. Because from your point of view, your body disappeared and you were dreaming about something, being on a beach in Mexico or whatever. Okay. From your point of view, you cannot ever actually know for sure whether or not your body was there. But that doesn't really matter because the definition of real, again, is ever present, unchanging, and not dependent on anything else to exist or to be known to exist. Now, does that apply to your waking state entity? No, it doesn't. Because when you go to sleep, the body disappears. If it was real, it would not disappear. It would still be present in the dream. It's not. You say, well, but it's there laying on the couch. I just don't see it. Okay, fair enough. But the other definition of real is does not depend on anything to exist or to be known to exist. So, does the body fit that description? No, it doesn't, because the body requires the subtle body to be known to exist. So the body is dependent on the subtle body to even be said to be existent. So that rules it out as being real. Even the subtle body depends on what? Depends on you, consciousness, to even be known to be there. So for all of those reasons, you can't be this waking state entity. I mean, if you are this waking state entity, then why do you disappear? That doesn't make any sense, does it? Now, if you disappear, then of course you can't be this body because you don't disappear, do you? If you're there to say my body disappeared, if you know the body disappeared, then did you disappear? You couldn't have. You would have to be there to say the body was there, and then you'd also have to be there when the body disappeared and the dream started. Okay, so you were there, and there's the body and the mind, the waking state entity, waking state experience is happening, and then that disappears, and all of a sudden dream body, dream world, dream experience starts to happen. Now, how can you say that the dream experience was there? Well, if you appeared at the same time as the dream experience, then you wouldn't be able to say that it wasn't there previously. You would have to be there already for the dream experience to appear. Then you say, it's there. Similar to being at a party. I think I used this example in my commentary. Now, if I get to the party at the same time as somebody else, I can't tell you that they weren't there previously. However, if I was already at the party and someone shows up, then I can say, oh, they weren't here before, and now they're here now. So you have to ask yourself, how can you even say that? How can you say that, oh, well, the waking state went away, and then the dream state appeared? And then the dream state went away, and then the waking state appeared. Because you are the consciousness, you are Atma, you are the witness that is always present and unchanged, that can say that the objects are changing. Because generally speaking, the waking state and the dream state are just two different objects. So when one object pops up, you're already there to be able to say it's there. And then when it goes away, you have to be there to say, well, it's gone. And you have to be there when the next object pops up to say, oh, it's there. And you have to be there again when it disappears to say that it's gone. So the conclusion there is that no, you can't be the waking state entity because it's not always present, it changes, it's not real. And to even say that it changes, to even say that it's transient, that it comes and goes, you would have to be present and unchanging. And the exact same logic applies to the dream state. So for both of these reasons, you can't be either the dream state entity or the waking state entity. It's easy to see with the dream. No one really has a problem with that. No one really thinks that they're this dream entity. However, the waking state is difficult. Okay, but you can apply the exact same logic to either state and see that you must be the ever-present consciousness that is there in both states, that does not change, that is able to say that the states are even coming and going. So that's something to think about. In the meantime, I wanted to apologize for the infrequency of posting these videos. Last week I was out of town with family. This coming week I'm going to be out of town with family, so if it takes a while for me to post this next video about the deep sleep state, I do apologize for that. I don't mean to leave it at a cliffhanger or anything like that, but just be patient, please, and I will come back soon, and we'll conclude this discussion of the three states by talking about the deep sleep state in depth. Purnamidaf, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamadachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om.